It's a 4-note hoot. It goes like this.
Woo! Woo, woo! Woo!
And we do this before we have a timber sale if an owl's an issue. If there's no owls around in here, then we don't have to worry about that take from the Federal Endangered Species Act and also the State Forest Practices Act. We go through and do surveys so we don't have a taking.
Woo! Woo, woo! Woo!
This is a spot owl down here we've been monitoring for several years now. The county has a lot of land just off this road system here, and the owl is within a quarter-mile of the road. And it means we have some seasonal restrictions where we can't haul log trucks on a road past this nest with him nesting. So we have to come out here and hoot to see if he's nesting. If we don't find anything, we can't assume he's not nesting. Or if the response is such that it doesn't look like there is a nest, then we can haul anytime we want. Otherwise, we can't take a log truck on our BLM roads within a quarter-mile between March 1st and July 1st. What we do is we take feeder mice out and we offer the mice to the owl. They take it pretty easily. They're not very afraid of human beings. They come right up to you and they'll take the mouse, and if they eat it and they start stuffing the extra mice in the trees and nooks in the woods, then we assume that they're not nesting. If they take the mice to the nest, then we can count the chicks up and wait for them to fledge before we start hauling. If they don't show up at all, then we have to assume they're nesting. If an owl is near our property or on our property and been known to have a site there, then we have to continuously call that site for at least 3 years before we can say the site has been abandoned. If mistakes have been made in the past where we've had a dot was put on the map and I was pretty sure it was in error, it was a BLM notification to the state forestry that it was on county property, and gave them documentation and said, I think it's in the wrong spot. It still takes about 3 years of coming out for a couple weeks during the spring to prove that the owl's not there in order to be able to do something on our own property. The owl is down in the hill down here, and there's a small road above here where we take log trucks on, and this is used quite regularly by motorcycles for off-road vehicles, and people come out here and drive out here and use this road anytime they want. You can have equipment being hauled on this road, but a log truck is illegal to drive. If you have an owl within a quarter-mile of this road, you can't haul on it with a loaded log truck, but it seems that everything else is okay. To use a BLM road to haul on, if you have some timber that you want to use a BLM to access it, you have to go to a BLM permit. And it takes their time to do the permit, and 30 days after that for them to have all the procedures they do. And it's pretty much becomes difficult when you have a fire or have some blowdown or something like that where the trees are down the ground, and especially if pine, because pine tends to degrade and blue fast. So if you have something at the end of the season, you have to wait those 2 months in order to get your permit to haul on. It just reduce the value quite a bit, and eventually if it waits long enough, you have no product at all, and so the wood you were planning on harvesting would be wasted because no value.
Woo! Woo, woo, woo.
Try this way too.
Woo, 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 woo.
If he hasn't showed up by now, he's probably not going to show up.
I'm the former Director of Forestry for Josephine County. I was employed there for a little over 33 years. The county forest land on the 30,000 acres we managed had roughly 120 million board feet of timber on it. And we went from that 120 million board feet, we liquidated that over that period of time, but we also grew another 160 million board feet. And that's still there today. There's a lot of money being spent in trying to control or at least modify the environment to where fire won't become a raging inferno when it runs through our region. And that seems to be what's happening over the last 15 years. When we get fires, they have a great potential to become project fires, causing us to spend millions and millions of dollars in fighting them. And when it's all finished, we've got a lot of CO2 in our environment, lungs filled with smoke, and no trees and no wildlife in those regions. So they essentially have been converted down to just what a clear cut would look like, and it has to start over. So we're spending a lot of money, but I think we're just spinning our wheels doing that. We could better manage our forest if we did it like the county forestry does it, manage it with being a good steward in mind and not making it necessarily the cash crop, but certainly to manage trees you have to cut trees. And when you do this, I think that you can increase your yields, your timber yields. You can bring back a lot of the economy that once was here in the forms of woods jobs that paid good family wages, and I'm pretty sure they'd go back to being that. One of the things that has to change, though, before even that can happen is our housing market has to come back. We have to have a market for the product. But in the meantime, maybe instead of burning it all up, we ought to be managing it for growth so that we've got something when our markets do come back that we can put our industry back together again. We've shown that from a professional science standpoint, we can do much better than nature can do on its own. An example would be the Biscuit Fire. There was a fire that took out 500,000 acres, and with it, except for a few islands of green trees here and there that the fire missed, it's all dead. And now it's set up a situation that in the next 5 to 10 years, with all the new brush that's coming up in all of those dead trees, to set up another fire. And for some of you that are listening to this broadcast, you were here for that fire and you recognize the potential it had to take out Illinois Valley, the potential it had to take out the Gullis District, for the potential it had to take out a lot of the coastal cities, because it was all the way over there, burned clear down to the Smith River, and its potential to go on into Roseburg. This all could have happened except for a weather change. It wasn't so much what the firefighters were doing, but the weather change that brought this about. I see another fire coming. And this next fire, when it comes, it's going to be hotter because all of the trees are dead instead of green. And it won't be just taking off the foliage of the trees, it'll be taking the trees themselves. And it'll be moving so fast that you're not going to be able to outrun it.
My background deals with national forests, and what we were allowed to do with the revenues of a good, strong timber sale program was a lot of those revenues were able to come back to the forest and be able to supplement habitats and do a lot of other work. We were able to maintain roads and keep them in good working order, reduce sedimentation from roads, keep drainages accurate, keep them safe and well traveled. We were able to replant after forest harvest if that was needed. We were able to treat the slash. We were able to do habitat improvement projects, everything from wildlife to fish and habitat improvements. There was money that you could retain from those revenues, and there was a millions of dollar program that ran on that. As that program has dried up over the years, it's really affected the forest's ability to do a lot of those programs. In particular, roads are much more difficult to maintain. They've had to close a lot of roads just due to the lack of maintenance dollars to be able to keep them functioning properly without causing problems. There's been a reduction in stream habitat improvement projects and wildlife habitat improvement projects because there isn't the funding that comes from doing that. Another effect from losing a good portion of the timber industry on forests is their ability to respond to suppression of fires. Traditionally, that had always been a workforce that was out there in the woods, had skills, had equipment that was nearby and could help respond to lightning fires or other escape fires that might take place. That's something that has been a workforce that's kind of gone away. The network of roads really allowed ground-based forces to get there quickly and get much closer to fire sources and be able to use equipment like engines and get water to them. And the initial attack has been affected by that, especially in a large timber, fire bust that you get, a lightning storm that starts multiple starts, quickly outpaces your aerial reserves, and you're relying on your ground attack to deal with those. If you have half the road system available that you had before, that is going to delay access and make your initial attack suppression much more difficult. I was going to talk a little bit about the gridlock that's affected federal forests since the early 90s. It's been primarily due to spotted owl is a big one. We had listing of that bird under the Endangered Species Act, and how that was going to be dealt with on a forest, how much land you should set aside, how should you protect the species. It ended up going through quite a difficult litigation period that really closed most of the federal forest down for a number of years and reduced harvest to a level that is pretty minor at this point. The environmental movement kind of used that as an indicator of a way to stop timber harvest if you didn't want timber harvest. There's a lot of ways to prevent a timber sale if you don't like it. You can sue under Endangered Species Act. You can sue that the National Environmental Policy Act wasn't followed, NEPA. There's an Administrative Procedures Act. There's things under Marine Fisheries Service on listed species for fish that can deal with it. There's sensitive species. There's a number of environmental protections put in place to try to achieve something good on the ground that have been able to be used by groups that might just be opposed to timber harvest on any level that wanted to shut it down. And it's fairly easy, even if you don't win your lawsuit, you can stop a project and have it go through a fairly expensive, lengthy, and burdensome legal process to try to go through a defense to release something for harvest. During my tenure there, we always had something that was being litigated. A good part of the program most of the time was held up with something. Often a group could sue with a fairly broad brush approach to things that they felt were illegal, and basically only the cost of a stamp to have them submit that and be able to secure an injunction from favorable courts, and then you would be in a delay process that would take years to unravel in many cases. That was quite frustrating from a federal perspective, because you knew you had a good project, you did a lot of environmental analysis, you had actually brought it to the level where you had done the field work to get it prepared, sold it, had industry make a reasonable bid on it, there were people ready to go to work, and then they were held up at that point to try to just wait for it to get out of the court system. It was common to see 70 or 80 points that they would list in their claim, and you would need to have already addressed all of those. It was kind of what we called the shotgun approach. Someone could say, make a long laundry list of all the things they thought you didn't cover in your analysis, and if you had covered 79 out of 80, but maybe you didn't discuss one particular slug or snail or lizard or something that may have escaped your analysis or you didn't think was appropriate there, that could shut down your whole project and bring you back to the start of the drawing board again. And that happened, unfortunately, to us in a lot of cases.